Welcome to another Bringing the Zoo to You. I'm Diane and I'm one of the keepers here at Brookfield Zoo, and today we're bringing some of our wallabies to you. So these are Bennett's wallabies, also sometimes known as Redneck Wallabies because of that reddish brown color hair sort of by their neck and shoulder area. Here at the zoo there's actually two places where you can see these wallabies. One is at Wallabies and Kangaroos, which has a walk-in wallaby yard. And here at the Australia House, we have 5 male wallabies on exhibit. So the reason for that is so we can control our breeding and our population here. So we have the breeding males, and then when we are ready and it's an appropriate time to increase our numbers, we send one of our males over to the wild encounters where they can do some breeding for a few months and then they'll come back. So you see some of them are starting to come up. They're a little bit camera shy.
What do they have in the bucket there?
So the bucket is a grass flat. So during the colder months of the year, they don't have as much grass or vegetation to graze on in the yard. So our grounds department actually grows these grass flats so that we can still provide them with some natural foraging abilities. So now that we're coming up on spring, it's finally starting to be the time of the year where they get more grass to graze on, but this is sort of the last of our grass flats. They also have some browse next to them that we have shipped here also during the colder months. But then during the warmer months, we get browse delivered to us from ComEd when they trim branches off of power lines. So they know the approved species that are non-toxic for our animals and drop them off here so that they can graze on those as well.
So who's standing over by the grass flat right now?
Right now, that's Mike. And then over under the branch over there, the larger branch, is Rizzo. We've got one of the males we were going to highlight today is Mr. P. Sherman. It's actually his birthday today, or so we estimate. The very unique thing about marsupials is that when they are born, it's at a very underdeveloped state. So females are pregnant for somewhere around 30 days, and a baby, or a joey as they're known, is born, and it's very underdeveloped. It's hairless, it's blind, it only really has tiny little forearms, and it crawls its way to the pouch. So because they're only about the size of a small jelly bean, we really rarely ever see a birth. So a lot of it is just seeing the mother's pouch develop and then doing some math on when we might have seen breeding and calculating all those dates to calculate the most closest estimate to a birth date. So we have today as P. Sherman's birthday. Bonus points if anybody wants to guess how P. Sherman, the wallaby, got his name.
And how old is he?
He is 8 today. 8. Yeah, so most of these boys in this yard are around 8 years old. Rizzo is only 6, but the rest are around 8 years old.
Our servals just turned 8 the other day. It's like everybody's turning 8 this week.
Oh,
that's
number.
Cool. Sorry, I was super excited about that.
I believe that's P. Sherman right there starting to come up.
In the back?
Right here now.
No, he just hopped up.
Now he's by the grass.
Sorry, I have such limited visibility when I'm looking through the screen. I should use my actual eyes.
Well, one of the clues for his name is that in order to identify our wallabies, they have ear notches. So that means there's a little, sort of like if you get your ear pierced, they get a little notch placed in their ear when they're young. So each notch in a specific location represents a certain number. So on P. Sherman, he's got a notch on the side of his right ear, which stands for 40. And the one in the left is the tip of his ear is the number 2. So his ID number is 42. P. Sherman, wallaby, number 42. Those are all the clues.
That's cool. So do you count their birthdays the day they emerge, or the day that they start coming out of the pouch, the day they go into the pouch?
It should be the day that they are actually born and begin to crawl to the pouch.
Okay, so it's totally an estimate.
Right. So the mom is pregnant for about 30 days, so that is just a pregnancy. And they are actually born, we just don't see it because it's so tiny. And they get into the pouch on their own. So at that point, when they're in the pouch developing, they have already been born, but they continue developing for wallabies. It's probably around closer to about 7 months when they start to maybe come out and explore a little bit, still stay close to mom, still get back into the pouch and nurse. But then even once they're big and out of the pouch, they might still nurse until they're a little over a year old.
So what are some of the differences between wallabies and kangaroos? People like to tell me that wallabies are just short kangaroos.
That's fairly accurate. They're very closely related. They are in the same family. They're in the same genus. They're basically just smaller versions of kangaroos. They're built a little bit differently. If you can see how long their tail is compared to their body. They do a little bit different behaviors as well. These guys tend to sit on their tails. They sort of fold their tail underneath in between their legs and rest on it. Whereas the kangaroos don't seem to do that. Okay. Their tails are a little bit thicker and maybe not built for doing that. But behaviorally, they're also not quite as social as kangaroos. They don't mind, as you can see, they'll congregate together and eat near each other. But they don't really tend to come together to groom or do social things like that. Whereas kangaroos are more likely to do that.
So a group of kangaroos is a mob, right? Mm-hmm. What's a group of wallabies called?
Same, you can call them a mob or a troop even.
Okay.
What kind of grass are they eating?
That is just grown by our grounds department. I'm not sure what specific type of grass. They do also get hay here, and that is orchard grass. So again, our grounds department and our nutrition department both have all the approved species. So they will grow just anything from that list.
So aside from their enrichment, which is what the grass in the browse is, what type of diet do they get?
Here at the zoo, they get a grain that's designed for marsupials. Again, marsupials are the animals with the females have the pouch for development. And on top of that, they get some greens, so different varieties of lettuce. They get chopped sweet potato and carrots. Occasionally they get some apples. And then for special events like this, or tours or things, they might get treats. Right now I'm throwing them some peanuts. So that's just like a special treat, but they really like them.
Mm-hmm. So they seem to have really long claws. What do they use those for?
They can use them for sparring. So if males were to get into a little fight, or as you might have seen or heard, they refer to it as boxing. These guys can balance on their tails and sort of kick, or use their front paws and nails to kind of swat at each other. So they might fight that way, but otherwise for eating and foraging, they pretty much just use their mouths. Once in a while you might see them hold the peanut like a squirrel with their two little front paws, but they don't really tend to grab something and put it in their mouth that way.
Well, they definitely are very adorable. Right now we have a Kangaroo Joey in the pouch. So what's the difference between how long a Kangaroo Joey stays in the pouch and a Wallaby Joey?
The Kangaroo Joey might just be a little bit longer. Okay. They're more around 9 months is when they would start to actually come out of the pouch. So our Joey is estimated to be around 8 months old, and it hasn't fully emerged from the pouch yet. It just sort of sticks its head out and its paws. Sometimes a leg is out with its head because it's running out of room in there. But wallabies might be a little closer to about 7 months when they start sort of coming out for the first time.
And how do you tell the males apart from the females, other than the pouch?
The males tend to be larger than the females. So especially our like intact breeding males, they might have a lot more muscle to them. Of course, one of them is hiding way in the back, but he's a little bit taller and muscular. Same with kangaroos. They can get to about twice the size of a female.
Oh, okay. What's your favorite weird fact about wallabies?
Oh, a weird fact. I mean, that position that they sit in, I think, is very odd and
tail
weird.
Between their legs?
Yeah, of course. I don't think anybody's showing that right now, but a theory I have is that they don't want to get grabbed from behind because it's pretty easy, that long tail sticking behind them. Someone could easily, or a predator could easily, grab their tail and catch them off guard. So my thought is that maybe that's why they sit that way, because they fold their tail between their legs, and it's sort of the tip of the tail's in front of them then. So that would be a guess I have. I have no fact to back that up.
They're absolutely loving that grass.
Yes.
Do you have issues in the spring and the summer with them like picking the ground bare?
Sometimes, But actually a new thing that we started is yard sharing. So the yard next door is for our geese. And what we do, at least last year, what we started was before our geese go on exhibit, we let them over to that yard and graze on some of those grasses and then come back to their yard. So that yard stays relatively preserved since they only get a few hours of time over there. And then come back to their own yard.
Well, and of course, it's not their main source of food.
Right. They get, a full diet here.
I was just curious because they are just tearing apart that grass.
They do love the natural foraging. Yeah. So yeah, aside from their natural, the diet that the zoo provides, they get free choice hay. Oh, here comes Denali. He's the nervous one, but he's one of the intact males. He's very muscular. So yeah, they get the zoo's diet. They get as much hay as they want. But it's especially during those winter months that's harder for us to provide natural foraging just because of the bare, trees and the ground. So that's why we do order that box browse, and we do provide sticks still, even if they don't have leaves on them, because they will chew the bark. They'll strip the bark off the branches and consume that as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably good for their teeth too.
Yes, exactly. We're always looking to improve their dental health. But yeah, as you can see, they love the natural stuff. As much as we can get, we give to them.
And they do stay outside throughout the entire winter then?
They do.
Okay.
Only in very extreme cold temperatures, like below zero, we would lock them inside. But we provide them heat sources both in the shed and outside the shed. They have overhead heat lamps. They have mats on the ground to stay warm. It's just that if they're locked inside, they tend to get very nervous, and they're more likely to injure themselves if they're locked inside the shelter as opposed to being given the choice.
Yeah.
So we do all we can to provide warmth, but they're very cold hardy, so they stand the winters really well.
And they're really heat tolerant too, right?
Heat is a little harder for them.
Oh, okay.
But what they do is they don't sweat like we do. But if they're warm, they will lick their arms and legs so that the water can evaporate off. Or we do try to provide them with different types of pools if we have them, discs or something they can sit in with water, because they will stand in the water to try to cool themselves down as well.
See, I was wrong about one thing.
Oh, you were wrong. I mean, they still tolerate it. They do well.
That's true.
They just do other things to adapt.
I'm always learning things. And in the summer, I've seen sometimes you have like a little kiddie pool out here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they like to cool down when they can. But if you do see a wallaby with wet arms and legs but dry everywhere else, that's just because they did that to cool themselves.
Oh, we have somebody watching from Australia right now.
All right.
It'd be like us watching a Facebook Live about deer, I think. But still, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Did anybody ever get where the name came from?
Yeah. Somebody said Finding Nemo.
Yes. One of our former interns came up with that. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. If you want to come see them for yourselves, come on over to the Australia House. We're located by the North Gate or by the Carousel. All right. Thanks for joining.